We have more art than we know what to do with. 80% of the paintings in our public collections aren't even on display because we just don't have enough wall space. For years, thousands of paintings owned by us, the British public, have been hidden away and inaccessible until now. Thanks to the Your Paintings project, over 200,000 works have been painstakingly uncovered, photographed and put online. Some for the very first time. This vast new online database means art experts and amateur sleuths alike can make connections and discoveries that just wouldn't have been possible before. With all these paintings hidden away, it's perhaps not surprising that some have been mislabelled, misunderstood or simply overlooked. And I've got a feeling that by using the new Your Paintings website, there are a few interesting discoveries to be made.
Down she comes.
I've got it, don't worry.
Okay.
So I'm teaming up with Dr. Bendor Grosvenor, a historian and art detective.
This for me is the most exciting part of my job. Seeing something that hasn't been seen for centuries.
We'll be delving into our public art collections.
How did you find this? Seriously impressive.
Tracking down some fascinating paintings.
It was originally catalogued as a self-portrait. They were so alike that they could often be mistaken for twins.
Some undiscovered gems.
No, we've got a very unusual painting.
Good.
And finding out what our paintings say about us.
She's hot, in a 17th century way.
Join us on an art lover's road trip across Britain.
The next train to depart on platform 8 will be the 10:35 Eastern service to Leeds.
This is quite exciting and novel for me, in that I have no idea what we're going to film today. Bendor has asked me to come here to King's Cross. I don't know where we're going, and I don't know why we're going to be going there. So I've got to find him, and hopefully he's going to give me a ticket and illuminate me. I think I'm running slightly late. I've spotted him, he's just over here. Hi.
Hey, Alistair, nice to see you. How you doing?
Found you. Good. By the departures board.
Yeah.
Where are we going? That's what I want to know.
We're going to Darlington. I'll tell you more about it on the train. And,
Oh, you got my
here's
ticket.
your little
and
ticket.
stuff.
So,
Yeah, thanks very much.
Let's press on.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Bendor Grosvenor has a formidable reputation for spotting masterpieces that have long been overlooked. His investigations normally take place behind closed doors, but this time he's sticking his neck out publicly.
I want to show you a painting which has been a little bit unloved.
Right. A beautiful lady. I can tell you, Bendor, this is a portrait. It's a portrait of...
You're doing well, sir.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. That's good, isn't it? I have a very substantial expertise. She is an aristocrat. I mean, she looks like she's rather posh.
Yeah.
She's wearing, presumably, extravagant silks. That's a very expensive brooch at her bosom, which is partially exposed. What drew you to this portrait, Bendor?
It's a picture that's long been called a copy after Sir Anthony van Dyck, who's one of the most important artists who ever worked in this country. But in fact, I think there's a chance that it could be, as we say in the art world, it could be right, which means that it's not actually a copy after Van Dyck, but by the man himself.
So what was it about it that made you think that?
If you spend a lot of time, as I do, because I'm a bit of a Van Dyck anorak, looking at the real thing and lots of copies, you soon begin to tell the difference between an autograph work by the man himself and a copy by someone later on. So you just sort of begin to get a feel for these things.
Ultimately, this is your reputation, which is on the line. Do you feel at all anxious? I mean, if you're wrong...
Yeah, it could be a little bit difficult, this, if I'm completely off the mark.
Well, looking forward to seeing it in the flesh, as it were.
Britain is littered with copies of Van Dyck paintings, but finding an overlooked original would be a major discovery. We're heading to the Bowes Museum, in the sleepy market town of Barnard Castle, not far from Darlington. The building itself is a surprise, a fairy tale French chateau in the heart of northern England.
This place is enormous, Bendor.
Yeah,
When you said lurking in the archives,
peculiar place, isn't it?
yeah.
The museum was built in the 19th century by wealthy landowner John Bowes and his Parisian wife Josephine. They devoted their lives to creating this building and filling it with art. It was their gift to the local people.
Hi, Ben. Nice to see you again.
Thanks so much.
Hi.
Alistair.
Hello.
Welcome to the Bowes Museum.
Thank you.
Shall we go and have a look at the picture?
Great idea.
Thanks.
With over 1,500 paintings, the Bowes Museum has more treasures than it knows what to do with. The problem is, there isn't enough wall space to put all of them on show. So there could be an overlooked gem lurking behind the scenes.
Here we are in the stores, and this is the picture in question.
Aha, yes. I recognise her from the picture you showed me earlier, Bendor.
Give me your first impression.
First impressions, eh? Well, I mean, it's unmistakable that the canvas is very damaged. You can see a lot of paint has been lost. But it's almost like we're looking at her through this prism, this sort of yellowy brown liquid.
That's caused by the old varnish, and so what we're seeing here is a sort of yellowy film. Because after 50 years, it basically goes off. It's like milk curdling. So we're seeing both old varnish and lots of dirt.
So this is your reputation. You're saying this is a Van Dyck.
Yeah, very, very possibly might be, but
I think there's a lot more to find out what's going on underneath that discoloured varnish and the overpaint and the paint loss and the tears and so on. So I think there's a lot to discover here.
with Van Dyck you always get a sense of, bones beneath flesh and actual proper human anatomy trying to project itself from the canvas. And these are things that a copyist always loses in the translation. It's very quickly painted. That's another sign, a good sign, something that's spontaneous. And when you've got a picture that's being copied, it always feels much more laboured. But ostensibly, if we're looking for Van Dyck's, the picture presents us with a number of problems. The first is the oval, the sort of sections at the bottom there and around the top. Now, you never see that in a Van Dyck. And the second is this rather peculiar eye, which on the right-hand side of the picture is staring at us almost sort of in a zombie-like way. It doesn't make any sense at all. And if I put the torch on it, you can see that it's not making any sense compared to the eye on the left-hand side, which is actually quite sensitively painted.
And more translucent. It's sort of like the other one is a false eye, really.
Yeah.
We can't show her to the public as she is, so she'd just remain in store. I think it's better that she goes on an adventure. We try and find out who's painted her, who she is, and if not, at least we've had a exciting journey with the picture.
That's the kind of fighting talk we like to hear, isn't it?
To get to the bottom of the Bowes mystery portrait and find out once and for all if Bendor's hunch is right, we're taking the painting away for some detailed investigation. Before we can call in an expert, our portrait needs to be chemically cleaned to uncover, for the first time in hundreds of years, what lies beneath.
Now, I reckon that this is going to be quite a risky business, because it's entirely possible that once you clean away all of that varnish, all of the layers of dirt, all of the gunk, that the brushwork isn't nearly as good as Bendor is hoping. Or even worse, that some of the original paint just won't be there. Underneath the dodgy eye, for instance, there could just be a blank hole. And we won't know until we begin the analysis and the conservation process. So the whole thing is going to be quite nerve-wracking.
All the paintings in the Bowes Museum have been individually photographed and catalogued for the Your Paintings website. And yet, there are tantalisingly few details about our mystery painting, other than she's thought to be Olivia Porter, lady-in-waiting to Henrietta Maria, the wife of King Charles I. I'm hoping a rummage through the archives will shed some light on when and how the picture came into John Bowes' collection.
There is nothing in the archives that says we have some material by Van Dyck. So John's own catalogue doesn't say Van Dyck or anything like that. But using the two sort of clues, if you like, that there's a connection with Henrietta Maria of England, and obviously you're looking for a portrait of a lady of around about that period, the 1630s, 1640s. And I found a note by John in his own handwriting. Shall I show you it?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Here we are. This is John's handwriting, and he's headed it up here saying, pictures bought from Lepôtre. Madame Lepôtre is another one of their regular dealers in Paris. Right at the end, we have here, 1866, June the 9th, portrait of Henrietta of England and portrait of a lady of the same period. 45 francs, and we bought it. That's the little X.
The X means you got it?
Yes.
45 francs for both?
Yes.
So, we can say with some confidence that the painting that Bendor is interested in the stores is the second one listed here, the portrait of a lady of the same period. And the fact it's saying it's the same period as Henrietta Maria of England means it's 17th century England.
Yes.
So it was being sold in 1866 as a 17th century portrait.
Yes, or at least of a portrait of a lady of the 17th century.
There's far too much hair splitting in art history, isn't there? I'm not sure if this helps.
The museum's records have drawn a blank. But the culture show likes a challenge, and this painting's been lurking in a storeroom for far too long. We want to get to the bottom of exactly what the Bowes' mystery portrait is. A detailed analysis of the pigments used will allow us to date the painting, either to the 17th century, Van Dyck's lifetime, or to a later period.
There she is.
We might discover that Bendor's hunch is completely wrong, and it's a much later work.
Now, Olivia, I've come here because I need you to see if we can, first of all, prove that it's 17th century.
Well, it certainly looks like 17th century, doesn't it? But I suppose that the difficulty is that so many people in later periods all copied Van Dyck because he was so admired.
In all the Van Dycks I've seen, I've not seen him do a very sculpted oval like this. Now, my optimistic mind whirring away, it seems to me that this might be a later edition.
Absolutely, I think that would be relatively easy to see whether there was a layer of dirt or varnish, something in between, even a gap between the layers where one layer's hardened and the other one's been put on later.
Right. I guess we better let you get on and take your samples and start having a look, see what we can find.
Yes. To see where I am. Some nice holes here. Makes it easier for me to sample.
There were scores of portrait painters working in 17th century Britain. So what made Van Dyck a cut above the rest? Van Dyck was a child prodigy. He studied in Antwerp under the great Peter Paul Rubens, but soon rivalled his master's skill. When he moved to London in the 1630s, the arts-loving King Charles I welcomed him with open arms. And Van Dyck soon became the king's favourite painter. So it's a pretty big step to upgrade a discarded storeroom canvas to a genuine work by Van Dyck.
Bendor's told me quite a few times now that Van Dyck is his favourite artist, and obviously I admire his expertise immensely as an art historian, but in order to really understand why Van Dyck was so special, I think I also need to talk to someone who actually manipulates pigment and marshals oil paint on a canvas. In other words, I need to talk to an artist.
Alison Watt has invited me to Edinburgh to see a monumental early work by Van Dyck. Depicting the Italian Lomellini family, it was painted a few years before his move to England.
When you look at this, do you begin to understand why Charles I wanted Van Dyck very much to come and be his court painter?
Yeah, Van Dyck's brilliance was something which I think swept everything away. He swept everyone away in his path. His use of the medium, his use of paint is quite breathtaking. For example, there are certain areas of the painting which have been executed at great speed. We can see the vigour and the energy in the brushstrokes, particularly, I would say, in this painting, in his depiction of fabric and textiles. And also the way he reads his subjects. This is very much a psychological portrait. Van Dyck had an innate interest in the character of his sitters, and the success of this portrait depends very much on the quality of Van Dyck's perception of his subjects.
The amazing thing hearing you talk is that it's a reminder just how complicated making something like this is, because it's not just about that bravura brushwork that gets the sheen on a silk fabric just so. It's also other things like the way the group coheres, the psychology.
His observations are acute, and I think that is one of the things that makes him exceptional.
So I've brought along this. This is a reproduction of this picture from the archives of the Bose collection that my good friend Bendor has decided is by Van Dyck. This is clearly a piece of styrofoam with a rather ropey reproduction on it.
So glad it's not the original with your hands all over it.
Yeah, exactly. But what do you reckon?
Oh, this is so unfair. Well, I've always thought that painting was unique. It's unlike any other medium, and this proves my point, because painting is something that cannot be reproduced by any other means, and from this it's impossible to tell.
Van Dyck pioneered a new, freer style of portrait painting in Britain, and he left a lasting impression. Even after his death in 1641, the Van Dyck look would be emulated by other artists for centuries to come.
So this is the man who followed Van Dyck as Britain's next world-class portrait painter, Sir Joshua Reynolds. And he's shown wearing Van Dyck costume, which is a nod to how much he revered his great predecessor. The unusual thing about this picture is that it was painted by a woman, the up-and-coming Swiss starlet Angelica Kauffmann.
And what's more, the website suggests there may have been a bit of intrigue between them. I'm heading to Saltram House near Plymouth to see the painting that set tongues wagging for myself. Deep in the Devonshire countryside, Saltram was once the home of the Parker family, but is now in the hands of the National Trust. The house is currently all shut up for winter, but Saltram's house manager has agreed to let me sneak in.
Hi, you must be Louise.
The house is full of paintings, many by Joshua Reynolds, who did several portraits of the Parker family. There's also a clutch of works by Angelica Kauffmann, the female painter who took the 18th century art world by storm. Swiss-born Kauffmann was a precocious talent who had the luxury of choosing between a career in music or in art. Kauffmann's beguiling nature, combined with her delicate brushwork, made her wildly popular. Not least because she was queen of self-promotion and knew how to get in with the right people. Her intimate portrait of Joshua Reynolds raised a few eyebrows at the time.
Angelica arrives in England, 1766. She makes a beeline for this man.
he was already the leading portraitist of the day. And looking at it, it's a reminder for me, partly of her strength of character, her charisma, the fact that she could actually go and persuade him to let her paint him. Being a female artist in the 18th century was a very difficult thing to be, partly because it was frowned upon. You weren't allowed anywhere near live nude models, for instance, where you could actually hone your anatomy and your drawing and your draftsmanship. Instead, you were forced to work from the imagination. And Dr. Johnson said that, perhaps with reference to Angelica, public practice of any art and staring in men's faces is very indelicate in females. And I think you begin to understand, once you know that quote, why this image sparked so much scandal, because you look into Joshua's eyes and you imagine him staring straight at Angelica. And if you have a look, you can see his gaze. It's warm and gentle. Who knows what was going on between these two when this was painted? No chaperone in the room. She, supposedly very attractive. We know that he called her Miss Angel and that she also had a reputation as a flirt. Now that I've seen this picture, I'm beginning to understand why people thought the way they did.
There's no concrete evidence to suggest anything improper happened between Angelica Kauffman and Joshua Reynolds. And in spite of the gossip, they were two of the most sought-after painters of their day. Back in London, the paint samples from our mystery portrait have been analysed. We're about to find out whether the picture dates from the 17th century, Van Dyck's lifetime, or not. If this goes against us, we'll fall at the first hurdle.
Really want to know how you're feeling, Bendel. Are you at all nervous? You look a little paler.
I'm a little bit anxious, yeah. I mean, I'm just going on my visual eye and my hunch, and that is totally unscientific and totally subjective. So I could be proved a complete wally by one simple objective scientific test.
So let's go with test number one. Is it 17th century?
Well, the first thing that I found, which was of great interest, just looking at the surface of the painting, was this rather dull-looking yellow here, but actually it's one of these very bright yellows. It's either Naples yellow or lead tin yellow, and that's crucial because lead tin yellow became obsolete around 1700. And
so if it's Naples, it probably is post-17th century, and if it's lead tin yellow, it's likely to be 17th century.
Exactly, yes.
Which one is it?
Well, we took a tiny sample of it and analysed it, and they came back and showed a pattern that showed both lead and tin were there. So it's lead tin yellow.
Little smile, triumphant smile from Bendel.
A smile of relief.
Excellent. So the painting has passed test number one. We think it's 17th century. Now the second part of the investigation, as I understand it, is you were trying to establish whether or not these oval bits were painted afterwards.
Yes.
And what did you discover?
Well, there was a body of paint underneath the grey, and that had a line that had dried before the paint on top. And if we look at it at high magnification, we can see what might be the traces of a resin layer, in other words, a varnish.
So Bendel's hypothesis that these ovals were painted later on top of the dress hasn't been disproved.
There's a slight setback that we haven't found that nice clear layer that says, yes, this is definitely a later edition, but then we can't rule out that it is a later edition.
Yeah.
So I think we're still in play, aren't we?
Yes.
So
Now,
test number three is the hardest one of all.
Well, it is, and when you say we've got to prove it's by Van Dyck, I don't think that's possible, but evidence perhaps towards it. And one of the first things we found was this extraordinary pigment in the flesh paint.
This is blue.
Yes.
Blue in pink flesh.
Yes.
Is that unusual?
It isn't unusual with a good artist, with a master painter. Blue to make the flesh look cooler. Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And this is either ultramarine or smalt. Both blues were used in the 17th century, so there's no worry about that. And then, to my surprise, I looked at the brooch here, and you can see a blue here. Well, now that doesn't look like ultramarine. It's quite a greenish blue.
I was going to say, it's turquoise-ish.
Yes, yes. So I was really nervous about this because I thought this could be Prussian blue, and Prussian blue came in 1704.
Don't tell me you saved the bad news till the end.
Well, no, because fortunately we looked at the pigment, took a tiny particle of it, and this is it. It's azurite, which is a pigment that was used at the time and certainly by Van Dyck.
Great.
Good.
So you found nothing which says this can't be by Van Dyck?
There's nothing that says that it isn't by Van Dyck, absolutely.
I'm highly delighted and more than a little bit relieved, to be honest with you.
This was thought to be a 19th century copy at one stage, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So we now know that's not right. It was 17th century.
Yeah.
All the signs tell us that.
It's at least 200 years older, which is something.
Yeah. She's already starting to look much more beautiful to me. It's looking like Bendor's hunch could well be right. But reattributions don't come easy. And by putting over 200,000 paintings at your fingertips, this massive new online resource could throw up all manner of surprises.
I've been having a rummage on the Your Paintings website, which is always a good fun thing to do, and I've come across a copy of the picture in a stately home in Northamptonshire called Lamport Hall. I'm hoping it's not the real thing, because that'd be slightly awkward for me and the Bowes Museum. But if it is a copy, I guess it means that somewhere once upon a time there was an original picture that had to be copied. And then I noticed that the website calls the picture at Lamport Hall after Van Dyck. So hopefully somewhere that means there was a Van Dyck. We need to go to Northamptonshire. Yeah.
Lamport Hall near Northampton was the private home of the Isham family for over 400 years. But the house and its art collection are now in public ownership.
I was a bit concerned, Bendor, to get a call from you the other day, because it sounds like we have a potential problem on our hands.
Yeah, I didn't expect to be ringing you up saying I found another one.
There seem to be several versions of this painting.
I suspect there'll be more than one version of that, yeah.
Why are they all called after Van Dyck, and nobody knows where the original is?
I don't know, the honest answer. I think it's just because that's slipped under the radar. I mean, we know that until the Your Paintings website came along, pictures never been photographed, never been seen, never been properly checked out before. So you can see how easily these things get missed.
Alistair.
Yes.
It's Neil.
Neil, good to meet you.
Hello, Neil.
Bendor.
How are you doing?
Welcome to Lamport.
Thank you. Now listen, we are very interested in this picture, and we understand that you have a remarkably similar one, which we're worried is maybe a little bit better than this.
Well, certainly we hope ours is better. Shall we go in and have a look?
Let's definitely have a look.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, this way.
Aha.
Wow.
This way.
Now then.
Bendor, what do you reckon? I mean, she's in pretty good nick, isn't she?
It is good, isn't it? You can see the vibrancy of the colours and everything working as it should, and which we can't see masked by our film of gunk on the Bowes picture. I particularly like the way that the scarf is done and the sensitivity of the yellow highlights on that. It is nicely painted. But at the same time, it seems to have some generic weaknesses which just suggest that this is painted by someone who's following something else. So, for example, the crevasses of the drapery feel like they've been traced in a single line rather than a series of strokes. And so what we're looking for in a case like this is whether something feels like it's done with spontaneity and originality. So for the first time, rather than laboured strokes suggesting a copy. And I think that's what we've got here.
It's a polite way of dashing your hopes now.
It is. So we call her Dorothy, Countess of Leicester. I wonder who she actually is.
Well, that is not the name that I remember you mentioning.
No, we've got Olivia Porter,
Yeah.
Countess of Nowhere. And I wonder, Neil, if we can actually have a look. Can we look at the back of the picture?
Certainly be delighted to investigate.
Thank you.
We may have to move these neoclassical busts.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether we should do that, Neil, or perhaps you should.
Yes, yes.
How can we help you, Neil?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
And down she comes.
I've got it, don't worry.
Okay.
Ah.
That's in the download.
After Van Dyke, it says on the back. Dorothy Percy.
It's quite old handwriting, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm still impressed by the quality of the painting here. It's not quite as complex as you would expect to see, and this is a little bit more simplistic.
Yes.
It's like a sort of slightly out of focus photograph. There's just something, you're waiting for it to pop into life, but it doesn't quite do that. I think you could definitely call it Studio Van Dyke, so we can upgrade it from after, which sounds like a sort of a copy done many, many years after.
Yes. So it's not all bad news for Lamport.
No. Well, it's interesting news, yeah.
Well, I have to say that was quite positive, I think.
Yeah, I'm relieved. I'm relieved that it's not by Van Dyke, or at least I don't think it is. But I'm also intrigued by the identification. We're clearly going to have to work quite hard at finding out who she is, but I do know a place where we can go and try and get to the bottom of this.
Which is where?
The National Portrait Gallery Archive in London. One of my secrets of the trade. No longer secret.
You see, once you know the tricks of the trade, it's actually quite easy being an art historian, isn't it?
The National Portrait Gallery keeps photographs of thousands of portraits of everyone who's been anyone in British life. These methodically marked boxes contain a treasure trove of information. This is the place to come if you want to put a name to a face.
So, Bendor, it appears that we're in the nerve centre of the investigation here. It looks like you're on the cusp of cracking the mystery of the identity of our sitter.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? I hope so.
Well, we'll see what we can do. When we're trying to identify portraits by famous artists like Van Dyke, the best way to go about it is to look at the copies, because most of these pictures were copied.
So how many copies are there?
There's quite a few. And as we found out at Lamport Hall, there is a copy there which has been given a completely different identification of Dorothy, Countess of Leicester. And I've got a photo of that picture here, just to remind us.
Yes.
Now, they were fairly sure that it was Dorothy.
Yes.
And I'm fairly sure it isn't. If I could show you some other more certainly known pictures of Dorothy. There's one there.
It's a different woman.
Different face.
Yes.
Bless them at Lamport Hall, but I think we can reject Dorothy.
Right.
An even easier one to reject is another copy which was sold at Christie's in 1999 as Henrietta Maria, wife of Charles I. I think not. Henrietta Maria was a much more slight figure.
Yes.
And her visage is really very, very different.
Yes. Sort of more girlish, really.
Are you with me? It's not Henrietta Maria.
Yes.
Christie's should have done some research because they would have found that it was previously identified as Anne, Countess of Morton.
So a fourth possibility.
We now need to rule out Anne, Countess of Morton. And she looks quite different too.
Okay, there's no question whatsoever. She's got similar hairstyle, but that's irrelevant. She's definitely a different lady. I mean, I know that your hunch is that she is Olivia Porter, Endymion Porter's wife.
That's my hunch. Here's one which is absolutely 100% her because she's shown with her husband and her kids.
Mm-hmm.
However, this portrait, which is by Van Dyke, is in unfortunate condition, so I think the face has been quite heavily repainted. And even though it's definitely her, it's not really enough for us to go on. However, I've been in touch with one of Olivia Porter's descendants, and they have a portrait which is not in any of these files. They have a portrait in their collection.
Oh, wow.
Which is a copy of our picture in the Bowes Museum.
Yes.
And it's always been called Olivia Porter.
How did you find this?
Well, trade secrets.
That's seriously impressive.
But I think this is the proof.
Look at this, the rabbit out of the hat.
It's definitely Olivia Porter.
Why are you so confident in trusting this identification, which obviously suits your argument, whereas you're dismissing some of the other ones?
I think if something has got a really long history of being called Olivia Porter, and it's come through her descendants, I think that makes it quite believable.
So this has always been in their family?
Yeah.
So, if this is Olivia Porter, how do we go from that to saying that the original painting that Van Dyck created is this one in the Bowes collection?
Well, that's where we need to move on to the conservation.
Olivia Porter is currently hidden behind years of dirt and old varnish. Her details and true colours completely obscured. In this condition, it's impossible for an expert to reattribute the portrait to Van Dyck. So we've brought our painting to a specialist restorer who will remove the tarnish of years and, we hope, uncover her original appearance.
So this is it in raking light.
Picking up the anomalies of what you think is a flat object. All sorts of tiny bits of information you can pick up from this sort of thing. There's an old tear or dent here. Interestingly, here you can see some concentric rings. There's been a knock of some sort. Some small boy with a swashball or something. And all these little tiny highlights, which are where the paint is thicker, they've been saved. No, we've got a very unusual painting.
Good. Perhaps we should do some cleaning tests next.
Absolutely. Let's try.
Using a special cleaning solution, Simon will delicately remove the layers of old varnish, revealing the original appearance of the painting beneath.
And the painting is becoming whiter, is revealing its original colours. Look at that. That's nice.
Fabulous.
Well, getting back to what the original thing is always exciting. There's some very nice paint. It's very strong. This has never been exposed, I don't think.
Right. I have to say, this for me is always the most exciting part of my job, is seeing the layers of dirt and grime stripped back so that we get back to something that hasn't been seen for centuries.
And there's some very nice old cracks, very minute cracks there, right to back from the early period of painting.
Restoration's a painstaking business. Returning Olivia Porter to her former glory will take several weeks. But news travels fast in the art world. Back at the Bowes Museum, the corridors are alive with whispers. Could their forgotten painting be a genuine Van Dyck? The place is in fine fettle today, but like many art institutions, they haven't always had it easy. 10 years ago, the museum was struggling. They even had water pouring through the roof. If we could add a Van Dyck to their collection, it would be quite something.
Hi, do you work here?
I do, yeah.
You do? Good. I'm Alistair.
I'm Rachel.
Do you recognise this?
It's a potential Van Dyck.
Oh, you've heard?
I have heard, yes.
What would it mean for the museum if this were a Van Dyck?
We'd get a lot more interest from the visitors. Hopefully a lot more people from London would come up to see us as well.
What's the word in the museum? What are people saying? Do they think it is a Van Dyck?
It's mixed.
So there are some people who think it definitely is not.
I wouldn't say it definitely is not.
Who are the doubters, Sheila? Take me to the doubters.
Who's the doubters? No, because they'll kill me.
Well, as head of press, that'd be bad.
I think by the hair, it's by a good artist.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
what are you
hair.
seeing? What are you looking at?
When I look at other Van Dycks, I went on the internet to look at some of Van Dyck's work, and I noticed the hair. He was very good at painting hair.
I think it's Van Dyck. That's my non-professional opinion.
John. Alistair. So you're in charge of conservation paintings?
Yes.
Then I imagine you're quite familiar with this.
Indeed, yes. I'd love it to be a Van Dyck. I'd be really, really happy if it was, but I have some doubts over it.
You're raining on the parade a bit, John, at the moment.
I'm afraid I am, yes.
I'm keen on the artist Van Dyck itself.
You're not?
No, I like Impressionist paintings.
You wouldn't be impressed at all if this turns out to be a Van Dyck.
Would it? It'd be a feather in the Bowes Museum's cap, to be honest.
At the heart of the Bowes Museum are these grand painting galleries, and it's really wonderful to see so many pictures displayed in the old-fashioned way, crammed and crowded onto the walls. And you can see paintings of all sorts. I mean, there are religious paintings, landscapes, portraits. In some ways, it's quite hard to get a handle on the taste of the Bowes. What do they actually like? A little bit of everything, it seems.
And yet, there is one surprising omission. John and Josephine Bowes were living in Paris and purchasing paintings by the crate load just when a radical new style was taking off. With its free brushwork and vivid palette, Impressionism would take the art world by storm. So you can't help wondering why the Bowes didn't buy any for their collection.
There is a good reason for that, which is that Josephine died in 1874, which is the year that the Impressionists held their first group exhibition. So Impressionist work simply wasn't widely available. And even after that landmark show, Impressionism was still extremely controversial. There was a review that appeared in Le Figaro, which is one of France's leading national newspapers, that called the new style a frightening spectacle of human vanity gone astray to the point of madness.
The Bowes were just too early to embrace the radical new movement. But there was a man north of the border who did. By the late 1800s, Glasgow was at the height of its powers. The city's thriving shipbuilding and tobacco trade had made Glasgow's merchants very rich indeed.
The trouble was, having shed loads of cash didn't necessarily mean that you were a gentleman. And a bit like, say, Russian oligarchs today, Glasgow's nouveau riche had a plan. They decided to shore up their social status by buying art. I think the idea was that if they could demonstrate good taste, then they'd broadcast to the world all sorts of enviable qualities like respectability and refinement. The only thing was that since they didn't have much experience of art or the art market, they weren't really sure what to buy.
This dynamic period in Glasgow's history is captured by a painting in the city's Kelvingrove Museum. It's one of my favourite works on the Your Paintings website, and it's another intriguing story of mistaken identity.
If you have a look, you could probably make a guess at who did it, because you can see, look at all those vigorous, quite pugnacious, fiery reds, oranges, greens. It could only have been painted by one man, the 19th century Dutch artist Vincent van Gogh.
And for many years it was thought to be of Van Gogh too. But in fact, it's a portrait of the influential Scottish art dealer Alexander Reid, the man who brought Impressionism to Scotland. Francis Fowles' great-grandfather was one of his most loyal clients.
Yeah.
Well, here is Alexander Reed.
Yes, this is
it. I think you've got a personal connection with this
I
painting.
do, that's right, yes. My great-grandfather used to buy pictures from Alexander Reed. Here you are. Looks rather a fine gentleman.
Fine moustache, yep. William Allen Coates.
Yes, that was his name.
So he had a very big business himself.
Yes, he was working in a large company. So therefore he acquired quite a large house, as you can imagine. This is the house that he
It's not really
bought.
a house, is it, Francis? This is a castle, yeah.
This is Skelmerley Castle in Ayrshire. He also had a flat in Edinburgh.
God, so he really was doing all right, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And he had to stock them all with pictures.
Well, yes, so you can imagine these large houses could take quite a lot of furniture and paintings.
Francis's great-grandfather was typical of the new breed of collector keen to further their social status through art. And Alexander Reed was well placed to cater for their demand.
They were very busy men, so they didn't necessarily have the time to go and buy pictures. And Reed was particularly innovative as a dealer because he was trying to persuade these Scottish collectors to buy Impressionist art at a time when, even in France, Impressionism was viewed with suspicion.
Early in his career, Reed did a stint in Paris, where he fell in with a bohemian crowd and found himself sharing a flat with Vincent van Gogh. This portrait is a record of their friendship. But there's an element of narcissism. Van Gogh was said to be drawn to men who looked like himself.
They are quite similar physically. They both had the same red hair, green eyes. They were so alike that they could often be mistaken for twins.
What goes wrong?
Well, before he came to Paris, Alex Reed had met a woman called Mary Bacon Martin, and he'd fallen passionately in love with her. But unfortunately, whilst he was in Paris, she became engaged to be married, and he was feeling pretty down in the dumps about this, and confessed his misery to Van Gogh, who said, "Well, I have the perfect solution. Let's commit suicide together." So he wanted to have this kind of suicide pact, which Reed obviously was not particularly keen in participating in.
That was the swift end of the friendship.
Yeah.
Reed returned to Glasgow, where he used the connections he'd made in Paris to establish himself as the city's leading dealer of Impressionist art. It's thanks to him that there are so many Impressionist paintings in Scottish collections. Back in London, Olivia Porter is nearing the end of her adventure. Our specialist restorers have been working round the clock. With the old varnish and overpaint carefully stripped away, the original brushwork is becoming visible beneath.
You're going to love this. This is the most exciting part of the whole process. She's going to pop into life, actually.
I can't wait. I'm rendered slightly speechless by this. She's really looking beautiful now. It's as if she has much more charisma than she did before.
Yeah, you're right. I'm glad you picked up on that. It feels vulgar to talk about a portrait of a woman so subjectively, but she's become prettier, hasn't she? She's become younger.
She's hot, you know, in a 17th century way.
By wetting the painting, Simon can give us a tantalising glimpse of what our portrait will look like when her restoration is complete.
On this swab I have white spirit. This will actually help you to see the most genius parts of the painting. You see the three dimensions that the artist has achieved in these highlights, shadows, highlight, shadow, highlight, shadow, and then it all sweeps around the back of her shoulder like this. And what is also worth noting is this transparency in the gauze of this very expensive piece of clothing with a little bit of gold thrown in. Very sexy piece of kit to have. And then you come up here and you'll start to see the three dimensions of the hair, the intensity of the hair, her lips suddenly become
and the
three-dimensional.
reds as well of their face.
And then look at this eye socket, the way that it now recedes in there as well. And this curl now has got a shadow behind it. And this is what she's going to look like.
Sometimes you don't need the documentary evidence, you can just use your eyes. Bendor first spotted Olivia Porter on the Your Paintings website. And while we wait for her transformation to be completed, I too have found a little storeroom surprise of my own, but mine's a bit more contemporary. Although it's an important work, it's not currently on show, but tucked away in a South London storage warehouse.
How are you on modern contemporary art?
Hopeless, utterly hopeless.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know why that delights me so much. Maybe it's my turn to feel knowledgeable in some small way. Could we go to Kennington, please?
We're off to see a work by Bridget Riley, one of Britain's most respected contemporary artists. Painted in 1961, it marks the beginning of Riley's groundbreaking exploration of geometric form known as op art.
First impressions.
First impressions, well, it's a striking thing, isn't it? It's very black and white.
I was looking for the antithesis of a Van Dyck, but yet a painting that I think has a similar load of charisma as a painting by Van Dyck.
Ooh, steady on a minute. Hang on. As much charisma as a Van Dyck, okay.
Although it's completely flat, I think there's this compelling, I would say even charismatic, sense of depth that takes you right in as those squares distort and buckle and bend. It feels like you could plunge into the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I can see it's a clever visual trick. But where's its brilliant painterliness? Where's anything about it other than its overall conception?
Well, I think it's unfair to judge it according to its painterliness because it's quite deliberately not a painterly painting.
Okay, point taken.
What I find exciting about this image and a lot of other 60s art is they're reacting against that entire tradition. In a sense, they're saying, we are artists, we are creative people who want to express our world around us, but we can't use those means which Van Dyck did before because it would be one big old cliche. We have to move forwards. And what they found here is a new mode of expression which is deliberately non-painterly. It's deliberately flat, and yet she still manages to play with some of the aspects of painting, such as surface versus depth, that has always fascinated artists through the centuries.
Yeah.
And also an expression, I think, of the time, of the whole psychedelia of the 60s. This is prophetic of that counterculture. All of the sort of hedonism is in this haywire, completely crazy chessboard.
I can see its merits, I can see it's doing it for you. But tell me, of the two paintings you and I have been looking at closely, you would rather take the Van Dyck home with you, wouldn't you?
We don't know yet that it's a Van Dyck, for starters.
Good point. If it was.
Oh, that is a difficult question. I haven't thought of that. I'm going to duck out of that by saying that what I like about art and find endlessly fascinating is that you have so much diversity. So it isn't a case of saying, is Riley better or worse than Van Dyck? Clearly, they're doing completely different things.
Okay, well, I feel suitably chastised then, but I definitely have the Van Dyck.
Well, I know
so
you
call me silly.
There's no doubt about that.
But A for effort in trying to get me convinced.
It's been several months since we first met our portrait of Olivia Porter in the Bowes Museum storeroom. With her enigmatic gaze now fully restored, it's time to call in Britain's leading expert to give us the casting vote. Professor Christopher Brown's knowledge of Van Dyck's work is second to none. His reputation revered throughout the art world. And and what he says goes.
Christopher, hello.
Oh.
Hi.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Hi, Ben.
How are you?
I'm fine. It's
Have you had a chance to inspect it?
Yes, no, it's looking very good.
Just to put this in context, when people over the years have come to you and said, can you say, is this painting by Van Dyck? How many of those pictures do you end up rejecting?
About 9 out of 10, I should say. I mean, really a lot. I mean, you have to remember this. Van Dyck was always a famous artist from the word go. From the age of 16, he was hugely admired. Copies were made. So a lot of pictures have to be rejected. But here, if you look at the subtlety with which the modelling, the actual bones of the face are done with the nose, I mean, even very subtle things like the shadow within the nostril, I mean, all that is very delicate, very elegant. Here is less happy. In this case, it's unfinished. But this is wonderful, I think, this scarf here. That's very subtly and fluidly painted. It's quite clear that this is indeed a late English period Van Dyck.
Whoa, you immediately?
I don't think there's any doubt about that. I don't think there's any difficulty with that. I mean, and this is absolutely elegant, painted with a whole series of overlaid glazes in order to get that warm sense of flesh. This absolutely is Van Dyck at his best.
Can I interrupt you for one second?
Course,
because I mean, I was feeling a bit nervous on Bendor's behalf, obviously. His reputation was on the line. But immediately, very strong reaction.
No, I'm entirely happy about the picture, and I think it's really a substantial discovery.
Bendor, you haven't really said very much. You should be jumping up and down on the spot.
Well, I think relief is the first feeling, because it would have been rather embarrassing to be proved not only wrong on this one, but very publicly wrong.
Well, I'm thrilled about the outcome. I just thought that you could have made Bendor a little more anxious before revealing a verdict. Hey, there it is. I think that couldn't have actually gone better. I'm feeling attached to this woman now.
I'd like to keep it, actually. Should we just keep it?
No one will know. No one will know.
We've all grown very fond of her, but it's time to return Olivia Porter to her rightful owners. Back at the Bose Museum, there's a sense of anticipation in the air as they prepare to welcome their newly restored painting home, and we reveal the results of our investigation.
Done quite a lot of research, and it definitely is Olivia Porter.
But the key question here, really, is whether or not this painting is by Van Dyck.
Put your hand up if you think it's a copy. I like your optimism. Put your hand up if you think it's the real deal. Encouraging.
We've got here some labels you've printed off. A style of Anthony Van Dyck, and we have an attributed to Anthony Van Dyck. We can rip both of these up. You'll have to print a new label which just says Anthony Van Dyck.
From storeroom stowaway to front of house star, our forgotten painting finally gets the recognition she deserves. You can find out more about the Your Paintings project and see the paintings featured in this programme at bbc.co.uk/yourpaintings.